Hey guys, tonight we slip into curled-toe shoes and bells as you become the unfortunate star of court entertainment. Just try not to insult the wrong duke. It's dusk in the courtyard, torches flickering, and all eyes are on you. You're sweating in layers of patchwork wool that smells like goat and garlic, the jingling bells on your ankles announcing every awkward step. Congratulations! You're a medieval jester. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air smells like sweat, roasted meat, and the faint whiff of chamber pot from somewhere distressingly close. Your job? Make the nobility laugh. Even if you're crying inside. Especially if you're crying inside. You stand before a group of nobles lounging like cats on velvet cushions, sipping wine and judging your every movement. Behind them, a bored falcon perches on a gloved hand. A lute plays off-key. You're the center of attention, and not in a good way. Your costume is ridiculous, designed to mock itself, bright colors stitched in jarring patterns, a floppy three-pronged hat with bells that tinkle with every sad head movement. The sleeves are too long, the shoes are curled like snails, and the codpiece, well, you didn't choose that codpiece. You're not just here to be funny. You're here to be available. A human toy for the lord and lady, the children, the guests, the guards, the cook who hasn't had a day off in 5 years. Everyone. And don't think you can just fall back on some knock-knock jokes. This is 14th century England, not open mic night. Your audience expects clever satire, bawdy verse, impersonations, acrobatics, flute solos, maybe even a quick puppet reenactment of the Crusades. Oh, and if the king's in a bad mood? Better pray you remembered his favorite riddle. Historians still argue whether jesters were truly free performers or enslaved in velvet collars. Some were gifted from one noble to another, like a singing dog or a particularly amusing barrel of wine. But here's your truth, you're both invisible and on display. A fool, yes. But also the only one allowed to mock the king without losing your head. Usually. And let's be clear, you probably won't survive this. There's a reason you were invited to court. Maybe your village was taxed into dust and this was your only way out. Maybe you had a natural gift for rhyme. Maybe you once juggled chicken bones in front of the wrong merchant and word got out. Whatever it was, you're here now. As you stand in the middle of that great hall, firelight dancing on stone walls, you begin to feel the sheer imbalance of power. The nobles hold your fate in their jeweled hands. You hold 3 apples and a dented lute string. The crowd goes silent. Someone coughs. The baron raises an eyebrow. It's showtime. You start with a limerick about a monk and a sheep, safe enough to draw laughter but not enough to make you an enemy of the abbey. Next, a bit of juggling, 2 apples in one hand, one on your foot, and the crowd oos politely. You add a fart noise for effect. The children clap. The baron frowns. You panic and switch to a noble impression. Maybe a little too accurate. You adopt Lady Winifred's high nasal voice and prance across the floor mimicking her exaggerated curtsy. The laughter is sharp this time, louder, too loud. Lady Winifred drops her goblet. You see the flicker of something dangerous behind her smile. Enough, the steward snaps. Come here, fool. You freeze. The tension in the room shifts. You've only been here a few hours. Already, your job is walking a tightrope over a moat full of sharks. In hats. Fun fact, some jesters were actually intellectuals, chess masters, poets, even secret advisors. But most were there because someone thought their face looked funny while crying. You shuffle forward, bells jangling. The steward leans close. Do the pig. Now. Ah. The pig impression. Classic humiliation. You drop to all fours, snorting and snuffling, rolling in invisible mud while nobles chuckle and toss breadcrumbs. One lands in your eye. Someone throws a coin. It hits your ear. Welcome to your new normal. You crawl back to your corner and sit in a heap, trying not to sob into your tunic. A servant hands you a mug of watered wine. The torches hiss. The nobles move on, now watching the fire eater who arrived after you. His beard is already smoldering. You finally exhale. You didn't die tonight. That's a win. Across the hall, another jester, older, rounder, dressed in faded purple, gives you a pitying look. He's missing several teeth and one eyebrow. He mouths something at you. Tomorrow's worse. And it will be. Because in this job, tomorrow might include a bear on a chain, a prank war between rival dukes, or getting locked in a trunk for the bishop's amusement. You slump against the cold stone wall and close your eyes. The bells on your hat keep jingling even when you try to be still. Somewhere, a lute plinks another wrong chord. Somewhere else, a noble whispers your name with a grin. And in the kitchen, a roast goose crackles, something you won't taste unless you steal it. And don't think that's beneath you. By the end of this week, stealing from the cook will be the least degrading thing you do. Your second day begins with a slap. Not a metaphorical one, though there'll be plenty of those too. No, this is a literal open-palmed thwack from a hungover noble who thinks it's hilarious to wake the fool by smacking him with a roasted partridge wing. You jolt awake on the rush-stuffed mat that counts as your bed, bells clinking with every startled movement. Your back aches, your tongue tastes like vinegar and regret, and your right leg is half asleep. Not the kind of grand awakening you were promised when they called you to court. But then again, the fine print on "Royal Entertainer" is all bloodstains and spit. Up, Jester, the steward barks from the doorway, eyes as gray and cold as the stone walls around you. The guests are still feasting. You're late. Feasting. Of course. Last night's banquet bled into morning like a nosebleed on fine linen. You stumble to your feet, wiping yesterday's wine from your tunic. The bells on your hat have become your personal soundtrack, every movement a miserable little tinkle-tink of servitude. You head toward the main hall, dragging your feet past servants scrubbing grease from stone, knights half asleep in their armor, and a very confused goose walking in circles near the stairwell. No one notices you. Unless they want something. And surprise. They always want something. The hall is somehow louder than yesterday, nobles still at the tables, reeking of mead and overcooked boar. One baroness is weeping into a pie. Another is attempting to climb under the table in pursuit of a knight who is either asleep or dead. You don't ask. This is your crowd. You lurch into your routine, this time juggling turnips while reciting a poem about a drunken bishop. It's risky, but you've learned that low-level sacrilege gets the biggest laughs. One noble almost chokes on his sausage. You take it as applause. But here's the real problem, the novelty of you wears off fast. Especially in a court filled with fickle attention spans and pent-up boredom. So what now? You try to improvise. Always a gamble. You launch into a pantomime of two local lords arguing over who has the more impressive moat. The joke is dumb, but the gesture, those exaggerated waddles and pompous sneers, gets giggles. Until one of those lords walks in. And he is not amused. Suddenly, the laughter dies. You stand frozen, mid-pose, hands curled like talons, mouth half open. The Lord stares at you as if he's debating which limb he'd miss least if he had it removed from your body. Was that meant to be me, fool? Just a general lordly type, you say, squeaking. He leaves it at that. Which is worse than yelling. Now you get to spend the rest of the day wondering if your stew will be poisoned or your boots will be set on fire while you sleep. Historians still argue whether jesters had protected status at court or if that was just a convenient myth. Some were considered sacred. Others were tossed into pawns for public fun. It all depended on the mood of the monarch, and whether your jokes landed. And let's be honest, your jokes hit or miss. Especially when you're making them on 2 hours of sleep and your only rehearsal space is the privy. Midday arrives. You retreat to the outer courtyard, trying to breathe freshish air. You watch a trio of scullery boys sword fighting with mops. One of them calls you Bumblebutt. You bow dramatically, as if it were a title of honor. They pelt you with cabbage stalks. You duck behind a crumbling archway and collapse onto a crate. Your knees throb. Your voice is raw. And your stomach hasn't seen food since yesterday's bread crust, half of which was stolen by a raven, by the way. A raven with excellent comedic timing. A footman finds you 5 minutes later. Lady Matilda requests you. Oh no. Lady Matilda. Sharp of tongue, cold of heart, and wielding passive aggression like a knight wields a broadsword. Last night, you may or may not have implied her new hairstyle looked like it was woven by squirrels during a thunderstorm. She hasn't forgotten. You shuffle up to her solar, bow low, and try to look appropriately terrified. Do something funny, she says. You freeze. Anything, you ask. She leans forward. Make me laugh, fool. Or cry trying. And so begins the longest 15 minutes of your life. You sing. You dance. You mime. You pretend to be a lovesick goat. Nothing. Then finally, in pure desperation, you trip over a stool, an actual accident, and slam your head into a table leg. She erupts in laughter. A sharp, high cackle. The kind that says, "You're an idiot, but at least you bleed for me." You crawl out, bruised and victorious. Now here's a fun historical nugget: the court fool was often registered property. That's right, you weren't just employed. You were owned. Literally listed on estate records alongside livestock and fancy tapestries. Charming, right? And speaking of tapestries, you're expected to help clean them tonight. Because the stable hand is ill and apparently jesters are multi-purpose tools. You spend the next hour beating dust out of unicorns and saints, trying not to sneeze your soul out through your nose. By the time night falls, you've performed 6 times, mopped up wine from the king's boots, been insulted by a 6-year-old with a better vocabulary than you, and had 2 chicken bones thrown at your head. You limp back to your mat. You eat half a turnip and a crust with questionable jam. You try to ignore the throbbing in your temple and the strange warmth in your left foot. You think about the traveling troupe you used to work with, how you left them for greater opportunities. You laugh, softly. At yourself. At your life. At this ridiculous world where pain equals applause. Somewhere above, bells toll softly. Midnight. You drift asleep as the torchlight fades and the mice come out to play. Tomorrow will be worse. You wake up choking on a feather. Not poetic. Literal. One of the geese has somehow made its way into your corner of the servants' hall again, and it decided your mouth was the perfect nesting site. You sputter, cough, spit feathers into your hand, and realize your audience of one goose looks mildly disappointed in your performance. Welcome to another glorious day in the life of a medieval jester. By now, the blur between personal dignity and professional obligation is fully erased. You don't have boundaries anymore, you are the boundary, the edge between laughter and violence, performance and punishment. And today's schedule is about to get creative. Because, as it turns out, your job description isn't just, be funny. It's also, be whatever we say you are. Historian accounts from courts in England, France, and the Holy Roman Empire describe jesters as a sort of one-size-fits-all peasant, comic relief, punching bag, messenger, interpreter, even babysitter. Today, you'll be all of the above. It starts when the steward hands you a note. You're to recite this, verbatim, before lunch in the grand hall, while balancing a fish on your head. Right. Because court messages aren't just delivered, they're performed. The note is sealed with the Duchess's crest and smells faintly of lavender and doom. You peek inside, it's a passive-aggressive poem about a recent land dispute, veiled in metaphor and absolutely dripping with aristocratic shade. You're expected to read it with just the right tone, playful enough not to be treasonous, pointed enough to draw blood. So now you're not just a fool. You're a diplomatic weapon with bells on. You practice in the corridor, balancing a salted mackerel on your head, don't ask where you got it, trying not to slip on the wet stone. The cook glares at you, probably wanted that fish for soup. Tough. You've got insults to deliver. The hall fills. You enter to tepid applause and the sound of someone snoring into a goblet. With a dramatic bow, you begin your performance, voice echoing off the high arches. A lady fair with lands to spare / complains her fields grow cold with care, / perhaps if her neighbors cease to graze / she'd find more cheer in warmer days. Oof. A murmur spreads. The crowd loves it. The Duke in question does not. He stares at you as if mentally measuring your coffin. Historians still argue whether jesters wrote their own satire or were handed scripts by sneaky nobles looking to score points from the shadows. Either way, you're the one in front of the arrows. You smile. You bow. The fish falls off your head and lands in someone's mead. Roaring laughter. You live another day. After lunch, your duties shift again. A group of noble children needs distracting. Their tutor has a headache, and you, lucky you, have been volunteered. So, naturally, you're locked in a room with 6 sugar-drunk aristocrat spawn and told to entertain them. You attempt a puppet show. One child sets a curtain on fire. You try riddles. Another throws a shoe at your ear. You break into a clumsy jig to distract them and trip over your own foot. Wild applause. Eventually, they tire themselves out and fall asleep on velvet cushions. You quietly back out of the room, swearing never to reproduce. By mid-afternoon, you're called to the kitchens. Not for food, don't be silly. You're there to perform for the kitchen staff. They're overworked, underpaid, and sharpening knives suspiciously close to each other. You juggle apples while standing on a flour barrel. You recite a mildly rude limerick about a miller's wife. The baker nearly chokes laughing and throws you a roll. Jackpot. First real food all day. And still, your day isn't over. At sunset, the real nobles return to the feast hall. Wine is poured, roast boar is carved, and the mood shifts toward chaos. You're dragged back in, bells jangling, ready for the evening show. Tonight's theme: historical reenactments. Someone hands you a paper crown and a broomstick. You're now King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. Guess who has to die with an arrow in the eye? You do it dramatically, of course. Spin, flail, collapse into a plate of custard. You lie still as nobles roar with laughter, someone throws a chicken leg at you, and two dogs fight over your shoe. It's moments like these when you remember, you're not just here for entertainment. You're here to fail in a way that makes everyone else feel stronger, smarter, cleaner. The line between clown and scapegoat is paper thin. Quirky tidbit of the night: in some courts, jesters were fed only after the dogs. Not metaphorically. Literally. You'd wait your turn behind the hounds. You finally stagger out of the hall, covered in food, bruises, and misplaced dignity. A servant pats your shoulder in passing. "Better than yesterday," she says. You believe her. Back in your corner, you peel off your soaked tunic. A gold coin falls out, someone must have slipped it in during your fall. You stare at it, baffled. Actual pay? Or a sick joke? You tuck it under your mat anyway. Just in case. You lie there in the dark, head pounding, legs aching, but somehow, just barely, grinning. Because for all the humiliation, the confusion, the fish on the head diplomacy, you survived again. And some tiny, foolish part of you is starting to get the rhythm of this place. Not the dignity. That's gone. But the rhythm? You've got a bell-jingling grip on it now. You close your eyes, letting the echo of laughter fade into the hush of the corridor, the crackle of dying torches, and the soft scurry of mice trying to chew your sock. Sleep comes quickly. Tomorrow? Who knows? You might be playing a bear. Or marrying a pig. Or juggling flaming turnips during a trial by combat. Either way, you'll be ready. You open your eyes to a puddle. Not beside you. Not near you. Under you. Cold, mysterious, and probably not just water, seeping through the rush mat and into your bones. Delightful. The bells on your ankles tinkle as you roll upright, your spine protesting like an old church door. Someone has stolen your left shoe. Again. That's the third time this week, and you're starting to suspect the chambermaid has a collection of fool's footwear under her bed. But before you can investigate the case of the missing slipper, the steward appears with his signature look of disdain. The Baron wants you. Now. Try not to offend him this time. Oh, wonderful. The Baron, an overfed man with a laugh like a dying goat and a temper that changes direction more often than a weather vane in a storm, is not known for forgiveness. You follow the steward through corridors hung with damp tapestries and flickering torches, mentally reviewing your safest material. No jokes about baldness. No puns involving poultry. And definitely no reenactments of the Baroness's fainting spell during the harvest dance. You enter the hall, already sweating, and find the Baron sitting on a carved oak throne, chewing what looks like the end of a candle. Around him, a small group of nobles reclines on fur-draped benches. They're bored. And that's dangerous. Because when nobles get bored, jesters tend to bleed. You're barely through your opening lines, a mediocre rhyme about a tipsy friar, when a goblet whistles past your ear and shatters against the wall behind you. The Baron laughs so hard he nearly swallows the candle. "Oh good," he says. A moving target. You sigh internally and do what you've learned to do best, perform through terror. You leap, roll, tumble, and dodge. You dance with exaggerated limbs, make absurd faces, and pretend to be the court's pet goose in a tragic soliloquy about lost breadcrumbs. It lands. Sort of. Then it happens. You make a joke, light, harmless, you think, about Lady Isolde's new necklace being so bright it can guide ships to shore. She gasps. Silence follows. The Baron's lip twitches. Lady Isolde's father happens to be a wealthy noble from the north, and very generous with his soldiers. And you, dear fool, may have just insulted his precious daughter's dowry. Careful, fool, the Baron growls. Your tongue's quicker than your wit. And just like that, the air in the room curdles. One word out of place, and you could be tossed into the dungeon. Or worse, forced to clean the privies. With your hat. Here's the thing, jesters were technically protected by the license to mock. They could say what others couldn't, so long as it was funny. But, funny is subjective. What kills one night might kill you the next. Historians still argue whether that so-called protection was formal or just tolerated. Some jesters gained royal favor and wielded real influence. Others were flogged for misjudging a chuckle. You bow, apologize, and offer a ridiculous compliment about Lady Isolde's radiant jewelry-blessed aura. She pretends to giggle, but her eyes say I'll have the kitchen boy poison your turnips. You live. Barely. Afterward, you escape to the stables. It smells better than the hall, somehow, a mix of hay, horse, and honest labor. You sit beside the stable boy, who hands you a crust of bread and doesn't ask for a performance. Just quiet company. You almost cry. He tells you about a jester who once mocked the queen's shoes and disappeared the next day. They found his hat in the moat, he whispers, still jingling. You nod. Noted. Never joke about footwear again. Later, as twilight drapes the castle in purple shadows, you're summoned again. Not to perform, oh no. This time, it's punishment. Apparently, one of the nobles did take offense, and while they won't say who, you're ordered to clean the privy pit as penance. There's a shovel, a bucket, and a smell that could strip paint off walls. You tie a cloth over your nose and pray your ancestors aren't watching. You mutter jokes to yourself as you work, something about holy relics being less potent than this stench. You laugh. A little. Because if you don't, you'll weep. Quirky detail of the day, some jesters kept pet animals to help with their act. One historical fool had a goose he trained to bow to nobility. Another kept a monkey in a miniature doublet. You, meanwhile, have fleas. They do tricks too, mostly biting you in your sleep. After the pit is clean, or at least less terrifying, you make your way back to the servant quarters. But no rest yet. Tonight, you're performing again. Surprise! This time, it's in the private chambers of the Duchess. A smaller, more intimate audience. Which somehow makes it worse. She greets you in her nightgown, flanked by ladies-in-waiting and an overly judgmental greyhound. You're to lighten the mood. No pressure. You sing a soft tune, play the lute with trembling fingers, and tell a story about a talking sheep who outsmarts a tax collector. It lands better than expected. The Duchess actually claps. The greyhound does not bite you. And then, just as you think the night's ending on a high note, she speaks. You're cleverer than you look, fool. Perhaps, too clever. You laugh nervously. That would be a miracle, milady. She studies you. Don't forget your place. Oh, you won't. You couldn't, even if you tried. Later, Back in your corner, you sit on your mat and press your head against the cool stone. Your joints ache. Your skin itches. Your pride has packed its bags and left the castle entirely. And yet, you're still here. The fire in the hearth flickers. The bells on your hat lie silent on the floor. Outside, the wind howls over the battlements, a lullaby of stone and sorrow. And as you drift off, you whisper to yourself the joke you couldn't say aloud today. Because it was too good. And too dangerous. You smile into the dark. The castle is alive with noise before dawn, which is never a good sign. You blink yourself awake, still curled on your mat like a discarded rag doll. Boots stomp past your door. Somewhere, a servant is crying. Somewhere else, a rooster screams like it's being exorcised. You don't need a crier to tell you, something's happening today. And that something is worse than usual. You hobble toward the hall, trailing bells and sleep dust, to find the steward waiting. He doesn't look thrilled to see you, which, for him, is just his default expression. Get ready. His Grace is hosting guests from Aragon. The king wants, full spectacle. Ah! Foreign guests. Nobles who haven't seen your act before. Fresh victims. And fresh dangers. You already know how this will go. The court wants to impress, which means you're expected to be brilliant. But these guests aren't familiar with your rhythms, your satire, your well-practiced visual gags involving fake pigs and chamber pot hats. One wrong joke, and you'll offend not just a local lord, but an international alliance. You don't just need to be funny. You need to be flawlessly funny, in 3 languages, without accidentally insulting someone's Grey-Tant's bloodline. You spend the morning polishing your bells, dusting off your cleanest doublet, the one without gravy stains, and sewing a fresh orange into the tip of your hat because apparently the citrus smell distracts from your natural odor. That one came from the cook. You didn't ask. Noon arrives, and the feast begins. The Aragonese nobles enter like exotic birds, gold-threaded sleeves, glinting brooches, an aroma of clove oil and smugness. They speak loudly, laugh seldom, and eye everything like it might insult them on sight. You are introduced with a flourish, the royal fool of His Majesty's court, known for his wit, his verse, and his unique style. Your cue. You bow, hard enough that your hat flops over your eyes. You open with a bit of slapstick, a too-wide smile, a fake stumble, a juggling act involving 3 goblets and 1 very nervous ferret, borrowed from the falconer. Don't ask. They chuckle politely. Good start. Then you launch into your multilingual poetry routine, a limerick in French, a proverb in Latin, a ridiculous tale in passable Castilian about a monk who accidentally blesses a chicken instead of a child. The nobles blink. One snorts. You catch a smile. You exhale. You're in. But not for long. Someone, probably your own baron, trying to show off, nudges you toward the table. Tell them the one about the Hungarian bishop and the donkey. You freeze. That joke. The punchline involves certain anatomical comparisons. Funny in England. Possibly a death sentence in Aragon. You pivot. Ah, yes. But perhaps something more local. How about a tale of 2 Englishmen who build a church entirely out of cheese? Laughter. Crisis averted. Historians still argue whether jesters were trained diplomats or simply lucky improvisers. Today, you feel like both. Your job isn't just to juggle, it's to balance political tension with punchlines. As the feast wears on, you're passed around like a particularly entertaining breadbasket. Every noble wants a taste. One wants a song, another a story, another wants you to mock the bishop's stutter. You oblige, very carefully. But then comes the king's request. Show them the duck impression. You hesitate. This is the one where you flap your arms and waddle in circles while quacking a hymn. It's dumb. It's demeaning. But for some reason, royalty finds it hysterical. You duck, your pride, and go full poultry. Wings flapping, eyes wide, you honk out a mangled Latin prayer and belly slide across the floor. The hall erupts. Laughter like thunder. The Aragonese nobles are wiping tears from their eyes. Someone throws a figure. You catch it in your mouth. You've won the room. Until you catch sight of the bishop. He is not laughing. You stop, mid-quack. Because now, the room has split, half roaring with mirth, half watching the bishop's clenched jaw and twitching fingers. One wrong word from him, and this entire show becomes a heresy hearing. You bow. Forgive me, your grace. I merely sought to honor the harmony of duck and doctrine. A beat of silence. Then, mercifully, the bishop exhales and chuckles. Indeed. Even the Lord's creatures deserve joy. Crisis averted. Again. But your heart's still racing as you back away from the high table. Your entire existence is a tightrope walk over a vat of boiling stew. Quirky tidbit of the day, some jesters were given symbolic scepters, called baubles, topped with grotesque faces or carved caricatures. You carry yours now, a silly stick with your own face badly painted on top. It's chipped and smells faintly of garlic. You love it like a sibling. The rest of the evening is a blur. Music. More jokes. You are kissed on the forehead by a noblewoman whose name you forget. You're offered wine, which you accept. You're handed a puppy to juggle. You refuse. Finally, you're dismissed. Not dismissed from life, just from performance. You stagger out of the hall, belly full, arms aching, the laughter still ringing in your ears like an old song you used to love before it became a curse. You pause by the window, staring out at the stars. You're exhausted. But you did it. For once, you got through a day without offending anyone important, being flogged, or stepping in something that used to be a rat. You lie down, let the cold stone soothe your back, and close your eyes. In your dream, you're juggling planets. They don't fall. Yet. It begins with a whisper and a wine stain. You're still half asleep when the steward pulls you aside and mutters, "Follow me." Quietly. No explanation. No breakfast. Just the vague smell of fermented grapes on his sleeve and the weight of something off. He leads you through the east corridor, past the chapel, the abandoned gallery with the cracked ceiling, the tapestry where someone once embroidered a dragon with surprisingly large nostrils. At the far end, you descend a narrow stairwell into the wine cellar, where dust and secrets hang in the air like cobwebs. Waiting there, Lady Genevieve, a known schemer with a laugh like tinkling bells and the conscience of a starving cat. And standing behind her, arms crossed, is her younger brother, the one with a dagger always tucked too visibly into his boot. "Fool," she says, "you're going to help us." You blink. With. She smiles. Information. Ah. That kind of help. You're officially being recruited to spy. It's not unusual, really. Historians note that court jesters were often used as informants, disarming, ever-present, and underestimated. Who better to overhear plans, repeat conversations, pass messages with a grin. You're invisible, until you aren't. Lady Genevieve leans in. You're in the Queen's presence often. You see who she favors, who she avoids. And you hear things. You try to deflect. Mostly bad poetry and indigestion. But she's not amused. Listen, she says, her voice syrups low, we're not asking you to lie. Just, observe. And let us know when something interesting happens. There it is. The trap, sugar-coated. Say no, and you might vanish before supper. Say yes, and you've just stepped into the endless swamp of noble intrigue, where today's ally is tomorrow's accuser. You nod. Slowly. Good Jester, she purrs. Later, you sit in the stable, picking hay from your sleeves, wondering what you've just agreed to. You talk to the stable cat. She doesn't answer. Probably wise. That evening, the Queen summons you to her chambers. She's in a rare good mood, lounging in a velvet robe, combing her hair, humming a song you don't recognize. You always cheer me up, she says, patting the stool beside her. Perform something soft. No fart jokes tonight. You oblige with a gentle ballad, plucking at your lute, your voice barely louder than the crackle of the hearth. She listens with half-lidded eyes. You watch her watching the shadows. And you wonder what she's hiding. Because now, you're supposed to notice. You feel her mood, her glance at the sealed letter on the table, the tension in her jaw when a servant brings in wine. You aren't just performing anymore. You're reading. And you hate it. Being a jester was already precarious, but at least your humiliation was honest. This is slipperier than a greased eel in a monk's bathhouse. You return to the great hall, tired and queasy. You meant to sleep. Truly. But instead, you're summoned again, to perform for a drunken noble whose teeth are more silver than enamel and whose laugh ends in coughing fits that spray everyone in range. He claps his meaty hands. Tell us something scandalous, fool. You try a safe tale, a myth about a peasant girl who steals the duke's underpants and wins the harvest festival. It lands. Barely. But then he leans closer and says, tell us what you really know. I hear you're in the Queen's favor. You freeze. He winks. She tells Jesters things, doesn't she? You laugh. It sounds like a wheeze. He lets it go. But the seed's been planted. Now you're not just a performer. You're a suspect. Quirky fact, some courts train jesters in cryptic speech. Puns layered with secrets. Stories with double meanings. You think about this now, wondering if your next tale needs to say two things at once. Later that night, in your corner of the servants' hall, you try to sleep. But your thoughts keep pacing like angry nobles. You've become a pawn in a game you barely understand. You remember a jester you met years ago, old Tom, from the northern provinces. He used to say, the fool wears motley so he can bleed in silence. At the time, you thought he meant blisters and bruises. Now you know better. The worst pain is knowing too much, and not knowing what to do with it. And still, you're expected to dance. So you do. The next morning, you serve breakfast jokes with roasted turnips, your smile as hollow as the bread. You deliver your usual insults, your usual rhymes, your usual pratfalls. Nobody suspects a thing. Except maybe the steward. He watches you with narrowed eyes. Did he hear about Lady Genevieve's little cellar meeting? Did someone else notice your glance linger too long on the Queen's parchment? It's a new game now, and you're wearing the same silly hat. Midday, a young page slips you a note. It's blank. You hold it up to the firelight. A single sentence appears in lemon juice script. He knows. You don't sleep that night. You rise before the sun, heart thumping, palms damp, hat askew. Someone knows. Maybe everyone knows. Maybe the very walls are whispering about your midnight alliances and duck imitations and that time you accidentally insulted a saint. But it's not paranoia if you really are the joke that's wearing a target. Outside, the courtyard is shrouded in gray fog. The kind of fog that hides everything: truth, footsteps, dagger-wielding noblemen. The castle feels like it's holding its breath. You pass a servant who bows a little too low. A guard who doesn't return your glance. A maid who whispers to another just as you pass, then quickly looks away. You're not sure which is worse, being seen, or not being seen at all. Back in the kitchens, the cook gives you a crust and mutters, "Careful, fool. The wind smells like secrets." That makes absolutely no sense. But it terrifies you anyway. The steward calls for you with his usual grumble. Royal court convenes this afternoon. You're on the program. You blink. Court. What, like trials? He grunts. With guests. Wonderful. Nothing like a public display of legal drama, bread throwing, and awkward silences. And now, you're the entertainment in between cases. A jester. A buffer. A distraction while someone's cousin is accused of witchcraft or tax fraud. Midday arrives. The court fills with velvet-clad nobility, whispering behind fans and bejeweled hands. The hall is stifling, torchlight flickers against polished shields, and the tension crackles like dry kindling. You are summoned mid-trial, just as the steward is reading out a list of suspicious goats. You tumble in, feigning confusion, juggling a set of carved vegetables painted to look like clergy. The room erupts with relieved laughter. You are, once again, a tool for diffusing tension. A clown crowbar. But you're also listening. Watching. Reading every flinch and frown. Lady Genevieve sits stone-faced beside her brother. The queen is pale and distracted. And across the hall, the Aragonese envoy keeps staring at you like he's seen you in a dream. Or a dungeon. You do your routine, falling over the accused stool, inventing a song about innocent goats with suspicious facial hair, and finally impersonating the court recorder by narrating the trial in exaggerated falsetto. Even the judge cracks a smile. Historians note that jesters were sometimes used to soften the sting of harsh verdicts. Gallows humor wasn't just an expression, it was a schedule. After the fifth case, something about stolen candles and a suspiciously clever duck, you're dismissed. You bow deeply, turn, and nearly crash into Lady Genevieve herself. She hooks her arm in yours. Walk with me. You don't say no. You glide out of the hall like conspirators in a painting. She leads you through a side passage into a small library where the books are mostly decorative and the shelves smell like old boots. You've done well, she says. You've been observant. You shift your weight. And what exactly have I seen? She smiles. Enough. Then she steps closer. Too close. You'll attend the banquet tonight. There will be a performance. You'll be part of it. Just follow our lead. No more details. She vanishes like smoke. You're left standing beside a shelf labeled poetry, that is, in fact, filled with cooking ledgers. Quirky tidbit of the day, Some jesters wrote satirical plays performed by other fools, coded critiques of noble behavior disguised as harmless comedy. The good ones lived. The great ones vanished without a trace. You head back to your corner, nerves frayed. You polish your bauble. You rehearse a few safe lines. You consider faking a plague boil. But that evening, as the banquet begins, there's no escape. The hall is buzzing. Everyone's dressed like peacocks dipped in gold. Even the dogs have little cloaks. You are pushed onto the dais with the musicians, right beside the lutist who always smells like onions. The queen enters last. The room quiets. And then the play begins. Two actors, a shepherd and a knight, take the floor. It's a farce, clearly. The knight is pompous. The shepherd, sly. They argue about taxes. The crowd chuckles. Then the shepherd makes a comment about royal alliances that go sour faster than milk in summer. The laughter slows. The queen stiffens. Your heart drops. This isn't a play. It's a message. A satire aimed at the queen, disguised as a comic skit. You've seen it before. But now, it's happening live. You glance at Lady Genevieve. She nods, almost imperceptibly. You realize what they're doing. They're using you as cover. You're the fool, the neutral party. If the queen lashes out, it'll be framed as her not understanding a joke. You're the shield for treason. And if it goes badly, you're the scapegoat. Historians still argue whether fools were truly apolitical or simply the most disposable political pawns. You're living proof of the latter. Your cue arrives. You're supposed to jump in, play the role of the court messenger, and deliver a satirical proclamation about the knight's foreign marriage. Which is, of course, a jab at the Queen's recent treaty. You hesitate. Then, you smile. You speak the line, but you change one word, just one. Enough to muddle the punchline. Enough to turn the barb into nonsense. The crowd blinks. The rhythm of the scene breaks. The actors fumble. The insult doesn't land. The queen's eyes narrow, but she lets it go. Lady Genevieve glares at you across the room. You've just thrown a banana peel into a minefield. The play stumbles to its end. There is polite applause. Wine is poured. The nobles begin whispering. And you're dismissed with a flick of the steward's hand. Later that night, you sit on the castle wall, legs dangling into the mist. The bells on your shoes are still. You've just made an enemy of one of the most dangerous women at court. And saved a queen who might not even know, or care, that you did. The stars blink above you like knowing eyes. The wind tugs at your sleeves. Somewhere, a door creaks open. A soft footstep behind you. You don't turn. You just say, if you're going to push me, make it quick. But no one does. Not tonight. You wake up in the infirmary. Well, technically it's the laundry room, but someone threw a sheet over a bench and called it medicine. Your ankles bandaged, your head's pounding, and a bucket of suspiciously warm water sits at your feet. Apparently, after the banquet you collapsed artistically. You don't remember it. But you do remember the queen's face. That tiny flicker in her eyes when you shifted the joke. Not a smile exactly, but the ghost of one. Like she knew, and maybe approved. You sit up slowly, muscles groaning. The healer, a woman with 3 teeth and a terrifying sense of humor, offers you something that smells like cabbage steeped in regret. You drink it. You immediately regret it. Keep your head down today, she says, as if she's warning a chicken in a fox den. You've stepped in it, fool. You already know. By midday, the castle's tension has changed flavor. Less wine-soaked. More knife-sharp. Gossip swirls like smoke in a wind tunnel. You're used to rumors, half your job is dancing in and out of them, but today, they feel pointed. Dangerous. The steward avoids you. That's new. Usually he can't resist reminding you of your uselessness. Now, he looks at you like you're a clay pot with a lit fuse inside. And then Lady Genevieve strikes. She corners you near the stables, flanked by her ever-scowling brother and a page who looks like he'd stab you for half a raisin. You ruined the message, she hisses. You smile. I thought the joke worked better my way. She steps closer. We trusted you. That's rich. Trusted, like one might trust a rock not to float. You used me as a weapon, you reply. But forgot I'm the one who knows when to drop the blade. She looks like she might strike you. Her brother definitely wants to. But she doesn't. Instead, she whispers, "You'll regret that." And walks away. Quirky tidbit of the day: in some medieval courts, jesters were buried with miniature weapons or symbols of office, as if they'd need to joke their way through the afterlife. Right now, you're wondering if that bauble of yours should have been a shield. Later, as you limp back to the hall, the Queen sends for you. Her chambers are warm, scented with lavender and old paper. She's alone, brushing her hair, the firelight casting long shadows. You altered the joke, she says, not looking at you. Yes, Your Grace. Silence. Then, thank you. You blink. She turns. They've been testing my patience for months. But no one dares say it plainly. Except you. In bells. You shrug. I'm too dumb to be subtle. She smiles. Really smiles. Don't sell yourself short. Your stupidity is artful. You bow low. A gift I honed in the privy. Historians still argue whether jesters held real political sway or merely acted as mirrors to power. You're beginning to suspect both can be true. And the mirror? Sometimes it shatters. The Queen pauses, then says softly, "Be careful. There are too many ears. And not all of them are as forgiving as mine." You thank her. You mean it. That night, you aren't scheduled to perform. But you do anyway. A quiet act, by the fire in the servants' hall, just for the maids and the scullery boys and the cook with the crusty apron. You tell a story about a frog who wants to be a lion, and learns that roaring doesn't always mean power. It's a simple tale. They laugh. They clap. No one throws a goblet at you. Later, one of the boys asks, "Are you ever scared?" You pause. Every day. He nods. Me too. And just like that, you feel it, the strange, invisible network beneath the castle's stone. The people who aren't in the paintings. Who patch the boots, sweep the floors, catch the rats. Who see everything, and say nothing. Maybe the nobles should fear them more than jesters. You retreat to your corner. You lie back, hat beside you, bauble resting on your chest like a ridiculous sword. You survived again. But you know something now, the game has changed. You're not just part of the show. You're on the board. And everyone's watching. As you drift off, You dream of bells that toll for fools, of whispers that sting sharper than blades, and of one perfect joke, so sharp, so subtle, that it topples a queen and saves a kingdom. You wake before the punchline. The castle throws a feast for St. Baldric. Who's St. Baldric? No one really knows. There's a fresco of him in the chapel, bald, holding a chicken, and apparently, he did something mildly miraculous involving a loaf of rye and 3 very confused pilgrims. Whatever the truth, the court has decided today's as good an excuse as any for a feast. And that means, you're back on stage. You're summoned before breakfast. Big crowd tonight, the steward grunts, handing you a costume that smells like old cabbage and something far less polite. Dress funny. Do something saintly. You eye the outfit. It's a patchwork robe stitched with gold thread and, oh joy, a false tonsure wig. A bald cap, with a little ring of fuzzy hair like a sad monk's crown. Quirky medieval festivals loved absurdity. There were entire feasts of fools, where bishops played fools, fools mocked bishops, and everything was upside down for a day. But here, you're still very much the bottom of the ladder, no matter how bald you look. As you try on the wig, you practice your opening lines, a mix of mock-reverent psalms and holy-sounding gibberish. You plan to bless a chicken. You might anoint a sausage. It's absurd. And perfect. The sun sets, and the hall glows with torchlight and grease smoke. The nobles gather, plates piled with pies shaped like fish and fish shaped like pies. Wine flows. Someone's already asleep in a ham. You're introduced with a flourish, the holy fool. St. Baldric's personal idiot. Charming. You trip over the dais, mumble a hymn in mock Latin, and begin your sermon. Lo, the blessed Baldric, who cast out the devil with nothing but stale bread and relentless optimism. Laughter rolls through the crowd. You baptize a beat. You chase a demonic duck around the hall while sprinkling wine on it. You deliver a fake blessing to a knight's bald spot. It lands. Hard. But then you see him. Lord Evermond. A man with a permanent sneer and a beard shaped like a weapon. He's new to court, freshly arrived from the west with rumors of poison, rebellion, and a taste for blood sport. And he is not laughing. He leans in, whispering to a nearby noble. Eyes on you. You keep performing, but your gut clenches. The vibe shifts. The laughter becomes uncertain, thinner, nervous. One too many jokes, and this could turn ugly. You pivot into a juggling act. Sausages and pears. Less risky. But Evermond interrupts. Fool, he says loudly, what does St. Baldric think of noble cowards who hide behind their title while plotting against their queen? The room freezes. Is that a jab? A trap? A test? Everyone turns to look at you. You can feel the heat from the torches. The cold sweat on your back. You take a breath. Then you grin. St. Baldric, you declare, says those men will be reborn as toads, forced to croak truth while dodging ducks for eternity. Scattered laughter. The queen chuckles. Evermond smiles, but not with amusement. You may have survived that barb, but something deeper's been stirred. Historians still debate whether jesters were mere accessories or subtle weapons of influence. But right now, you feel like both. A blade sheathed in bells. After the feast, you retreat to the corridor behind the kitchens. It's quiet here. Safe. You sit beside a hearth, warming your hands, when the steward appears. There's talk, he says, not unkindly. Always is. No. Talk about you. They say you're too clever. Too loyal. You don't reply. He crouches. Choose wisely. There are many fires in this place. Some will warm you. Some will burn you down. You nod. It's the most he's ever said without insulting your hat. The next morning, you find a note on your mat. No seal. No signature. He watches. Don't play both sides. You burn it without reading it twice. That day, your performances are quiet. Gentle rhymes. Clumsy jigs. You're trying to blend back in. Fade a little. But it's too late. You overhear servants whispering. The fool. He's in with the queen. No, with Lady Genevieve. He's a double agent. He's cursed. He talks to vegetables. Okay, that last one is true. But still. Even the animals avoid you now. The stable cat, your oldest confidant, won't sit near your boots. Probably hears the tension rattling in your bones. That night, you lie awake. The motley on your back feels heavier than chainmail. You think about running. Disappearing. Leaving this tangled mess behind. But where would you go? You're a fool. You belong to this life. There's no retirement plan. Just quieter rolls until you can't tumble anymore. The fire crackles. The castle sleeps. But you don't. You just stare at the ceiling, waiting for the next trap to spring, the next laugh to fall flat, the next shoe, or dagger, to drop. The bells on your hat stay silent. You wake to find your bauble missing. Not just misplaced. Gone. Your jester's scepter, your companion, your prop, your shield. The carved wooden face you talk to when no one else is listening. The one with the crooked smile and chipped nose. Someone has taken it. And in its place, a single chicken feather. Your mind races. A warning. A joke. A very aggressive poultry-related prank. You ask around. No one saw anything. The scullery maid shrugs. The stable boy says the feather might be from the kitchen's emergency goose. The steward doesn't even blink. Replace it, he mutters, like you've lost a spoon. But it's more than a tool. The bauble was part of you. Historically, Jester's baubles weren't just comic ornaments, they were symbolic doubles. Mirrors. A jester's soul, turned into wood and cloth. To steal it? That's not theft. That's a message. And you think you know who sent it. Lady Genevieve. She's been quiet. Too quiet. After your St. Baldric stunt, she vanished from the usual corridors. But her page has been watching you. Smiling like a snake who just swallowed your diary. You try to focus on your duties. The day's schedule is heavy, a midday performance for the Baron's nephews, followed by a riddle contest for the kitchen staff. You recite your rhymes, tumble with extra flair, even do the goose impression. But you're off. Everyone can tell. You keep glancing toward the shadows. Waiting for your bauble to reappear, or for your punishment to arrive. It doesn't. Not immediately. That night, the queen calls for you again. You find her by the hearth, painting her nails with crushed berries. Her gown is soft and loose. She looks tired. But she smiles when you enter. Sit, she says. You do. On the rug. Like a child. I heard you misplaced your bauble. Or it misplaced me. She chuckles. You always deflect with nonsense. That's why I'm still breathing. She watches the flames. You've been clever. Cleverer than a jester should be. You don't reply. I used to be clever, too, she continues. Before I learned how dangerous it is. She turns to face you. You could have let that play go forward. You didn't. You twisted it. Saved me a headache, and perhaps a civil war. You blink. I thought I just botched the delivery. You didn't. You chose. And now the air feels heavier. She leans closer. So, choose again. Where do your loyalties lie? Historians still argue whether jesters were ever truly loyal to anyone but themselves. Survival often demanded flexibility. Today's ally might be tomorrow's executioner. But in this moment, staring into the Queen's eyes, you realize your answer matters. And so you say, to the truth. As best as a fool can find it. She studies you. Then nods. And hands you something wrapped in silk. Your bauble. The paint has been retouched. The wood polished. It even smells faintly of lavender. Someone cleaned it. Someone valued it. You look at her. I found it, she says simply. Kept it safe. You clutch it like a lost limb. But you can't enjoy the relief for long. Because as you leave her chambers, heart pounding with strange gratitude, you hear two guards whispering. They found something, one says. In the west wing. Scribbled under the tapestry. Again. That's the third time. You hide behind a column and listen. Apparently, someone has been leaving messages, coded phrases, hidden in poetry, carved into wood, tucked under floorboards. The scribes can't decipher them all, but some are clear enough. Beware the fool who speaks the truth. Subtle. Too subtle to be traced directly to you. But close enough to turn heads. You realize something terrifying. Someone is framing you. And not with a joke this time, with intent. That night, you meet the steward in the garden, beneath the statue of Saint Margaret, patron of exiles and sore throats. He's smoking something pungent and dangerous. They're circling, he says. I noticed. Genevieve's got allies. Evermond, too. And the Aragonese haven't left. You nod. Why am I still breathing? He exhales smoke. Because no one knows what you'll say next. That's your armor. And your noose. He flicks ash. You need to pick a side. Or vanish. You stare up at the moon. It looks like an eye. That night, you perform again. A private party. Small crowd. Wine heavy. You tell a story about a fox who juggles truths and lies until both become the same. The nobles laugh. The servants don't. And just before you leave, someone drops a note into your hand. You're not the only one pretending to be a fool. No signature. No clue. Just that featherlight chill along your spine. You sleep with one eye open. And the bauble clutched to your chest. You're not paranoid if the walls really are listening. That's your first thought when you wake to find a small hole in the stones above your sleeping mat. Just wide enough for a pair of eyes. Or a knife tip. You spend a good 10 minutes poking it with a spoon before stuffing it with old straw. That won't stop anyone determined to kill you, of course, but at least it feels proactive. The castle's tension is now a character of its own. Not just background noise, but a constant, lurking presence. You feel it in every sideways glance, every unfinished sentence, every overly polite smile. The next morning, a new rumor blooms like mold on cheese. Someone's been stealing correspondence from the Queen's scribe. Letters. Maps. Seals. And, of course, the finger is pointed squarely at the jester. Because who else roams everywhere with zero rank and infinite invisibility? You laugh when you hear it. Out loud. Right in the corridor. The steward, of course, doesn't find it funny. "Don't mock this," he says. "They're taking it seriously." You hold up your bauble. "So am I." He's consulting his lawyer. He doesn't smile. You're told not to leave the inner court for a day. "Until things cool down," they say. You translate that to, "until they decide whether to arrest you." You spend the afternoon locked in a storeroom with a stack of broken lute strings, 3 moldy apples, and a broom that smells suspiciously like ale. You try practicing a new poem. It turns into a limerick about execution. You abandon it. Quirky tidbit of the day: one famous Tudor jester, Will Somers, was said to be the only person who could mock King Henry VIII without losing his head. You're no Will Somers. And Henry is at least 3 monarchs away. But you are learning how to make a room laugh just long enough to escape it alive. Late in the day, a knock on the door. The steward again. He enters slowly, closes the door behind him. "There's a plan," he says. Those words chill your spine more than a sword tip. He sits across from you. The Queen wants to expose Genevieve. But she can't do it directly. Too many sympathizers. Too much risk. You nod, already seeing where this is going. She wants you to perform. At the Midsummer Masque. One last play. You raise an eyebrow. A play? He nods. Something comic. Something biting. Something unmistakable. So this is it. The moment all your games, dodges, and jokes have led to. You're being asked to bring down a noble family, with a performance. Historians still argue whether jesters could sway court politics through satire. Whether their word could hold as much weight as a bishop's sermon. You now know the truth, not usually. But in moments of instability, when the court teeters, when alliances strain, humor becomes a scalpel. And you've just been handed the handle. You begin crafting that night. The play must be sharp, funny, damning, but deniable. A farce about a noblewoman who conspires with foreign envoys, betrays her queen, and tries to use a jester as a pawn. All wrapped in layers of metaphor so thick it could pass for nonsense, unless you know. You draft in your corner by candlelight. You test lines on the stable boy. You build the climax around a duck dressed as a bishop. It's risky. Bold. Possibly suicidal. But it's good. The Queen reviews your script in private. She chuckles once. Then nods. You have one night, she says. After that, I can't protect you. You don't sleep. The mask is tomorrow. You dream of strings. Not the lute kind, the puppet kind. And all of them, tied to your wrists. The next morning, the castle is humming with preparations. Flowers strung across balconies. Torches lit along every wall. Nobles arriving in absurd costumes, stags with golden horns, maidens in seaweed gowns, knights dressed as chess pieces. And you? You go as yourself. Motley. Bells. Bauble in hand. No mask. You step onto the dais in the middle of the courtyard as the sun sinks behind the parapets. The music dies. The crowd hushes. And you begin. You tell the tale of Dame Gossamer, a lady of noble birth and treacherous tongue, who consorts with shadowy foreigners, manipulates the jester, and nearly topples her monarch with laughter and lies. They laugh. They wince. Some shift in their seats. Lady Genevieve does not smile. Then comes the moment. The jester in your play, a fool named Wiggles, refuses to be used. He turns the tail on the dame. Exposes her, makes her the punchline. The crowd gasps. Genevieve stands. Her brother too. The moment stretches, like a rope pulled tight between gallows. And the queen laughs. Loud. Clear. Beautiful. And suddenly, so does everyone else. The spell is broken. Genevieve sits. Her face is unreadable. But the message is clear. The queen still has the court. And you just won the most dangerous performance of your life. That night, you're not sent back to your corner. You're invited to dine near the queen. She leans toward you. You did well. You may have just saved my throne. You nod. And my own neck, if we're lucky. She chuckles. But her voice lowers. Careful. Humiliation is sometimes more dangerous than defeat. You glance across the room at Genevieve. She's smiling politely. But her eyes say otherwise. You sleep with your bauble gripped tight in your fist. And for the first time in weeks, you really sleep. You wake to applause. Not a dream, actual clapping, echoing through the stone halls like a thunderstorm trying to learn rhythm. The kitchen staff has gathered in the corridor outside your chamber, half-dressed, flour on their faces, mugs in hand. They cheer when you emerge. Long live the fool, someone shouts. You bow so low your bells scrape the floor. The midsummer mask was a triumph. The queen's enemies slunk away, masked behind politeness and veiled smiles. Lady Genevieve hasn't shown her face since. Lord Evermond left at dawn, citing urgent business in the west. And suddenly, you, once a walking punchline, are the most talked about figure in the castle. Which is deeply, deeply unfortunate. See, jesters aren't supposed to be important. That's the whole point. You mock power so power doesn't mock you. But now. Nobles pause when you pass. Servants whisper your name like it's a spell. And the steward starts every sentence with, "Now listen carefully." You've risen too high on a ladder made of jokes. And ladders? They fall. The queen summons you that afternoon. Her chambers are bright, sunlight through stained glass, throwing ruby and emerald colors across the floor. She's not in state dress today. No crown, no stiff bodice. Just a simple gown, hair unbound. You've done well, she says. You nod. But you've also made enemies, she adds. And they don't forgive. You wait. There will be retaliation, she says. You've embarrassed them. Not on purpose, you say. She smiles faintly. Of course not. You merely told the truth. Then she steps closer. I want you to leave. Your heart stops. Not forever, she adds. Just a week. A retreat. A royal errand. I need someone I trust to deliver a letter to the monastery at Grinlow Hill. You blink. You're sending me to a monastery? They make excellent wine, she replies. You squint. Is this protection? She doesn't answer. Instead, she hands you a scroll, sealed, unmarked, and a pouch of coins. Travel light. Take no one with you. And don't speak of what you carry. You nod. And then you ask the most dangerous question, do you trust me? She meets your eyes. More than anyone in this place. And that's when you realize, she's just as scared as you. Historians still argue whether monarchs genuinely trusted their jesters, or simply used them as confessionals with bells. But you've seen her with the crown off, the mask loosened. She doesn't laugh often. But when she does, it's real. And that might be why she's still breathing. You leave that night under cover of dusk, dressed like a traitor, bauble wrapped in cloth at your side. No fanfare. No goodbye party. Just a bag, a letter, and a lingering sense of doom. The road is muddy. The sky spits rain. Every tree looks like it wants to mug you. You missed the castle already. Even the rats. Even the stew. You pass through villages that smell of dung and desperation. Perform a few tricks for supper, juggle a turnip, insult a chicken, charm a widow's goat. It's simpler out here. Less dangerous. But also lonelier. On the third night, you stop at an inn. Low ceiling, ale like boiled cabbage, a bed stuffed with straw and probably insects with political affiliations. You eat quietly. Try to disappear into the woodwork. But someone recognizes you. Not from court, thank the saints, but from before. A tall, one-eyed juggler with fingers like spiders and a voice like old parchment. Fool, he says. You freeze. From the festival circuit? I remember you, Whitstick, right? You used to wear that ridiculous green cap with the feather. You nod, slowly. Still do. Just mostly inside my shirt these days. He sits beside you. Orders 2 Alesh. You sip yours cautiously. What brings you out here, he asks. You lie. Running errands for the queen. Bread crisis. He laughs. Still performing. You shrug. Sort of. And that's when he leans in. You know the thing about fools, he says. We're the only ones who see the whole board. But they still blame us when the game goes wrong. You nod. They always do. He taps the pouch at your side. Careful. Some letters weigh more than swords. You stay the night, but you don't sleep much. Quirky fact, medieval jesters often traveled as unofficial diplomats. They could pass through borders more easily than knights. Nobody suspects the juggler with the squeaky hat. By the 5th day, you reach Grinlow Hill. It's less a hill than a lump. The monastery sits at the top like a brooding goose, stone walls, narrow windows, the faint scent of sanctimony. The monks greet you with suspicion, which is understandable. You are dressed like a disgraced carnival prize. But when you present the queen's seal, they relent. You are fed. Cleaned. Given a cot that doesn't smell like defeat. The abbot, a thin man with sharp knuckles and sad eyebrows, takes the scroll in silence. Reads it behind closed doors. Says nothing when he returns. But the next morning, he gives you a reply. You'll carry this back, he says. And, something else. He hands you a book. Plain leather. No title. What is it, you ask? A prayer, he replies. Or a warning. You don't ask again. You leave the monastery feeling heavier. Not from the book. From the silence. And halfway down the road, you realize you're being followed. Not openly. Just the sense of it, hoofbeats that pause when you pause. A shadow in the tree lean. A rustle with no wind. You speed up. Then slow down. Double back. Nothing. Until you hear the voice. Drop the book, fool. It's Lord Evermond. Of course. He steps from the trees, cloaked and smug, flanked by 2 soldiers. Quite the little courier, he says. Letters, books, secrets. You do get around. You say nothing. He smiles. Hand it over, and maybe I'll let you keep your tongue. You consider your options. Then, slowly, you raise your bauble. I challenge you, you say, to a riddle contest. He blinks. What? Riddle me this. What loses all power the moment it's forced? He scowls. You continue. The answer is laughter. And you're very bad at it. Then you throw the bauble, straight into his face. The distraction buys you seconds. You run. The woods swallow you. Branches claw your face. Roots reach for your ankles. Behind you, shouting. Hoofbeats. You run like the world depends on it. Because maybe, it does. Your lungs are fire. Your legs, jelly. You've tripped over roots, thorns, and a particularly vindictive badger hole. But somehow, by miracle or madness, you've lost them. You collapse behind a fallen tree, chest heaving, mud in your teeth. The scroll is still with you. So is the book. And your bauble. Somewhere in a bush, hopefully blinding Evermond with its wobbly nose. You laugh, a sharp, cracked sound. Because honestly, what else is there to do? Darkness creeps in. You're deep in the forest now, and the trees here don't whisper, they judge. The kind of trees that look like they've watched armies rise and fall, and still prefer squirrels to people. You don't sleep that night. Just doze in fits, your ear pressed to the earth, listening for hoofbeats. They don't return. At dawn, you climb a ridge and see the valley, misty fields, distant farms, and beyond that, just visible, the towers of the castle, like chess pieces abandoned mid-game. You're close. You make your way down carefully, avoiding roads. By dusk, you find a small shepherd's hut. The old woman who lives there eyes you like you might turn into a duck, but lets you in anyway. You trade a song for soup. She gives you a crust of bread hard enough to dent a bishop's helm and points you toward the back trails. Watch the foxes, she says. They don't just steal chickens these days. The next morning, you reach the castle outskirts. But something's wrong. Too quiet. No market noise. No singing. No scolding. Even the smell, less stew, more ash. You slip through the outer gate, disguised as a pilgrim, blessed be your ridiculous patchwork cloak. Inside, it's worse, guards everywhere. Tense faces. Closed doors. The steward finds you before you can sneak through the kitchens. You're alive, he says, clearly disappointed. I try not to make it a habit, you reply. He hustles you through back halls. No jokes. No small talk. Finally, the queen. She's in her private chamber, out of sight, behind 3 locked doors and a tapestry that smells faintly of moldy pears. Her eyes widen when she sees you. "You made it," she says. You nod. "The scroll. And the book." She takes them both with shaking hands. And then, she does something unthinkable. She hugs you. A brief thing. Awkward. Sincere. "You've done more than I had any right to ask," she whispers. You step back, stunned. Is this a reward or a goodbye? She doesn't answer. Instead, she opens the scroll. Reads. Sighs. Then the book. She flips pages carefully, finds a passage, reads silently. "What is it?" you ask. She looks at you. "It's the proof I needed. Names. Symbols. Genevieve's seal, Evermond cipher. Hidden in religious metaphors. Clever. Arrogant. So now you expose them." "No," she says. "Not yet." You blink. "Why not?" "Because we only get one strike," she says. "And it has to be fatal." You exhale. "And I'm the hammer." "No," she says softly. "You've been the mirror. Now you must be the knife." Historians still debate whether jesters ever wielded true power. Whether they were ever more than pawns. But you're beginning to understand, sometimes the pawn is the only piece that can sneak past a queen and change the game. You're sent to your chambers to rest. The steward tells the guards you've returned from pilgrimage, and nobody questions it. People never do, when they already expect the fool to vanish and reappear like a dream, or a plague. You sleep for 12 hours straight. When you wake, there's a bowl of soup, a dry robe, and your bauble, freshly washed. You hold it close, grateful it still smells vaguely like stale onions in triumph. The castle buzzes with rumors again. A banquet is planned. Another one. But this time, it isn't for saints or seasons. It's for guests. The Aragonese are returning. And this time, with an envoy more important than before. A prince's cousin. A symbol of peace. Or a very well-dressed spy. The queen summons you once more. "This is it," she says. "The moment we cut the thread. You're to perform, of course. One more farce. One more public joke that isn't really a joke at all. Only this time, it won't be subtle. It'll be surgical. The plan is dangerous. Obvious. Perfect. Lady Genevieve has written letters, sealed communications to Evermond and to the Aragonese. Copies are now in the Queen's possession. But revealing them outright would spark scandal. Perhaps war. So instead, you will reveal them on stage. You'll perform a skit in which a noble lady writes treasonous love letters to foreign friends, only to be undone when her fool reads them aloud at the royal table. Your hands shake as you take the script. "You trust me with this?" you ask. The Queen nods. "I trust no one else." You read the lines. The jokes land. The barbs pierce. It's brilliant. It's insane. It might get you killed. You spend that evening in your corner, rehearsing. The words feel like knives in your mouth. Too sharp. Too risky. But you sharpen them further. Because this is what you've become. Not just the jester. The reckoning. As you drift into a restless sleep, you dream of masks falling, of baubles ringing like bells of judgment, and of queens who laugh after they've won. The castle is scrubbed clean. Banners unfurl. Musicians tune their lutes with unusual precision. Even the rats seem freshly bathed. The Aragonese envoy is due to arrive by sundown, and the place glitters like a silver coin dropped in mud. A coin that's just waiting to be snatched. You've spent the entire day preparing. Not just your lines, your movements, your rhythm, your timing. Every syllable must be perfect. Every jest, a dagger. Every stumble, deliberate. Tonight isn't a performance. It's an execution. You stand behind the arras just off the banquet hall, peeking out as the nobility pours in. The queen enters last, regal and composed, like the calm eye in a storm of silk and secrets. She's flanked by her advisors, her guard, and one very conspicuous absence, Lady Genevieve. But she will come. Snakes always do. And indeed, just before the trumpets sound the Aragonese arrival, Genevieve glides in like she owns the oxygen in the room. Head high. Lips pursed. Dressed in a gown so stiff it could deflect arrows. She knows. She knows something is coming. But she doesn't know what. Historians still argue whether court betrayals unfolded in shadowy chambers or in full view of smiling courtiers. You now know the answer, both. Because a smile can be a blade, and a joke, a guillotine. The Aragonese enter, dark velvet, heavy rings, enough perfume to choke a bard. The envoy bows. Kisses the queen's hand. Takes his seat. The steward gives you the nod. It's time. You step out. Dressed in your full motley. Bells gleaming. Bauble polished. And a scroll, just a prop, of course, tucked into your belt. You bow low. Tonight, you begin, we honor our noble guests. But what is nobility without a touch of romance? A tale, if you will, of passion, treason, and poultry. Laughter. Scattered, uncertain. You begin your tale. The story of a lady, unnamed, of course, who falls in love with foreign power. Who writes letters sealed with kisses and ambition. Who uses a humble fool to deliver her secrets, never suspecting that fools, too, can read. Your voice dances across the lines like a tightrope. Every sentence a clue. Every joke a reveal. The audience laughs, then gasps, then stops laughing entirely. Because you pull the scroll from your belt. And read an excerpt. Word for word. Not a joke. Not a prop. A real letter. The one that names allies. The one that offers bribes. The one that speaks of a shared future once the queen's light fades. The room freezes. The bauble in your hand feels like a judge's gavel. And then, the queen stands. Arrest Lady Genevieve, she says. Chaos. Guards move. Genevieve shrieks. The Aragonese envoy looks like he swallowed a hedgehog. And you? You just keep smiling. Because this is the only moment you were born to play. Genevieve is dragged away. Shouting. Accusing. He's a liar. A clown. Yes, you whisper, but not wrong. The queen raises a hand. Silence returns. She turns to the envoy. I trust you'll understand that not all who wear silk speak for their kingdom. He bows stiffly. Indeed, your grace. Aragon wishes only peace. And now we might have it, she replies. The banquet resumes. A little more stiffly. A little less noisy. You retreat quietly. No applause. No curtain call. But it's done. Back in your quarters, you sit in silence. Your bauble lies on the table beside you. Its painted eyes seem to ask, was it worth it? You don't know. You've survived so long by hiding behind humor, by pretending you didn't see what others feared. Tonight, you were the opposite. Honest. Unmasked. And that makes you dangerous. The steward visits at midnight. She's secured, he says. Evermond's vanished. The Aragonese will leave in the morning. You nod. He sets something on your table, a coin. Silver. With your face on one side. You blink. What is this? A token, he says. From the Queen. You've earned it. You hold it up. Your jester's grin immortalized in metal. It feels heavier than it should. You're part of history now, the steward adds. Quirky tidbit, there are rumors, unlikely but persistent, that one court fool in 13th century Spain was once featured on a ceremonial coin after saving the king from assassination with a well-timed fart joke. You wonder what your legacy will be. A joke. A betrayal. A man in motley who told the truth too loudly. That night, you dream of the banquet again. But this time, everyone's wearing your face. And laughing. Except you. You don't perform for 3 days. Not by decree, there's no official, don't put the fool on stage announcement, but by the quiet understanding that no one really knows what to do with you now. You're not just entertainment anymore. You're the court's scalpel. A blade that walks and jokes and, perhaps most dangerously, remembers. The halls seem quieter now. As if the castle itself is holding its breath. Even the guards nod differently when you pass, no longer amused, but wary. They've seen what a jester can do. Genevieve is gone. Taken in the night, under escort, to some tower far beyond your knowledge. Evermond vanished even before the banquet ended, a ghost in velvet. The Aragonese envoy returned home with stiff diplomacy and even stiffer wine hangovers. And you? You remain. It's strange. You expected to feel triumphant. Victorious, even. Instead, you feel like the stage has collapsed beneath your feet, and no one bothered to tell you where the wings are. The Queen sends for you on the 4th evening. She's in the solarium, half lit by the orange hush of sunset, turning the pages of the strange little book from Grinlow Hill. You enter quietly, bells muffled. No audience now, just you and her. Sit, she says. You do. She closes the book. You've given me something rare, she says. Time. You tilt your head. Time to prepare. To respond. To choose. That's what you gave me. You nod slowly. And what happens next? She smiles. You rest. You laugh. I don't think I know how. But she insists. You're given 3 weeks away. A villa outside the city, small, sun-drenched, with nothing to perform for but birds and your own suspicious reflection. The steward says it's a gesture of gratitude. You translate that as, go cool off before someone poisons your shoes. The villa is peaceful. You rise late. Eat figs. Try writing again, funny verses about frogs who run banks and bishops who fear spoons. Your bauble hangs on the wall beside your bed. Quiet. Watching. One morning, you walk to the village nearby and perform for children. No satire. Just riddles. Silly dances. A goose impression that nearly starts a poultry riot. You remember why you loved this. Why you ever chose laughter as your armor. Because for a moment, just one, you're not dangerous. You're not a weapon. You're just someone who makes people smile. But peace, like all good jokes, ends too soon. A messenger finds you by the pond, fishing with a stick. The queen has summoned you. Again. Back at the castle, nothing feels quite the same. The old halls echo differently. The queen seems older. Tired in a way that even rest can't cure. You'll perform tonight, she says. A gentle one. You raise a brow. No treason. No treason. And so you do. You step into the hall once more. No big theme, no pointed metaphors. Just a fool, a lute, and a story about a fish who wanted to be a poet. It lands beautifully. Laughter returns, soft, sincere, untainted. Afterward, the queen waves you over. Would you do it all again, she asks, low and careful. You think. Yes, you say. But I'd flinch less. She chuckles. Then adds, I fear you'll be needed again. And with that, you understand. You're not done. You're never done. Because the world is full of foolish people with too much power, and every court needs someone brave enough to laugh at them. Even if the price is everything. You return to your quarters that night and find something waiting. A second coin. This time, the jester's face is smiling wider. And on the back, truth in jest. You hold it in your palm. It's heavy. But not too heavy. Not anymore. The fire crackles softly now. The castle sleeps. Somewhere far below, the kitchen embers fade, the guards yawn behind high walls, and even the ghosts settle into their stones for the night. You sit by the window, bauble resting quietly in your lap, watching the stars blink awake one by one, like the sky itself is chuckling in slow motion. You've told 1,000 stories. Some nonsense, some sharp as glass. You've worn the bells, the paint, the bright smile that hides the blade. But tonight, there are no lines to remember. No enemies to outwit. Just the gentle hush of a place momentarily at peace. The wind drifts through the high windows, cool and dry, rustling the old tapestries and the scent of warm straw. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls once and then falls silent again, like it, too, has nothing left to say. You lean back, breathing deeply. The motley still clings to your skin, but it no longer feels like a costume. It's just, you. Not the joke. Not the weapon. Just the man behind the smile. Tired. Quiet. Still here. The candle flickers low. And for once, no one is watching. No one is expecting. No one is waiting to laugh. So you close your eyes. And let the world grow soft. Let the night cradle you gently, as a fool who survived, outlasted the court, and lived to see silence. Sleep well, clever jester. You've earned it.